We're on. And so we are delighted to have with us from Brazil, Senor Marcelo Certo, and he claims to be a Paulista. That means that, as those of you who know Brazil, that he's from the city of Sao Paulo. And so we had dinner with him Tuesday night, and I was puzzled by that, because everybody knows that the Paulistas are the ones that enjoy life, or they're the ones that really work. They work, 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 work. Yes, in Brazil, the Paulistas are the ones who work all the time. And yet it turned out at this dinner that Professor Naranjo and I had with Senor Certo that he was a ton of fun, that he has this incredible sense of humor. And so I thought it must be that you're really Carioca, Carioca being the people from Rio. And so he said, well, no, our main headquarters are there in Sao Paulo. And so I wondered about that. But he has a subsidiary that is downtown in Rio, and so perhaps he has picked up the humor from there. And you wonder about the difference. You wonder about the difference there, about how that can occur. And as it happens, I've been reading a little book about, I do this from time to time, about how humans evolved. And this one was supposedly about how we evolved our sense of humor. And presumably, if we as a race evolved something, it's because it had some survival advantage. And here the argument was that having a sense of humor gave you a survival advantage. So I wondered, well, that's very simple. Of course, if you've got a sense of humor, then that means that if you're a man, that means that the ladies are going to think you're more fun to be around, and so you've got more chance of having progeny, and then so you survive. But of course, you can't write a whole book about that. And so they involve this elaborate theory about how if you have a sense of humor, then that means that you are willing to accept criticism. You're willing to have fun, make fun of yourself. And that's an indication that you're willing to learn from other people, and someone who's willing to learn from other people is going to have a huge survival advantage over those who are not. And so I thought, okay, well, that's cool. But then it turns out what? It turns out that Professor Certo, who has taught at the major research universities in Brazil, the University of Sao Paulo, he's taught at the major business school there, the Getulio Vargas Foundation, and so on. He also has published a book on how to learn from one's errors. And so he then combines an unusual combination of being a very hard worker, and you can tell that from the things that he has achieved with his life, founding a consulting firm that deals with franchising, introducing, in fact, one of the major introducers of the concept of franchising to Brazil, with being really fun to be with having a really great sense of humor. Well, okay, so that's the informal introduction, and I will turn this over for the formal introduction to someone who will do more of a job of telling you who he really is. But anyway, we are certainly delighted to have you with us.
Hi, everyone. I'm so honored and a pleasure to be here, introduced to Marcelo Certo. And David gave a wonderful human side of his introduction, but I wanted to kind of give a background why his presentation in this class is so important to you and as well as the University of Florida. And as you learn from this international business, especially in the Brazil case, know who, not know how, is the most important to do the right business in the Brazil. And he is the right who, and no other better person than representing the center of a network in the Brazil. Not the academic side, the business side, as well as the human side. And the relationship, friendship is most important. So you're going to learn a lot from his presentation. And not only to that, he makes I think he contributes a lot to the Brazil economy right now. Yeah, because he's the one introduced the franchise concept to the Brazil. When he does, in 10 years ago, there's no customer at all. And he created a market. To create the market, he had to go to the FJV to create the class. And to create the class, he had to write a book. To write a book and to reach the market, he had to organize association. So he built up everything from the beginning with the only vision and attitude, the good attitude, the humor attitude, and energy and the passion. So this is what the good business makes, right? And so Miller Retail Center, David F. Miller Retail Center is vision to develop the business between Florida and the Brazil, because the Florida is a gateway to Brazil for many, many American brands because there's not much in Brazil right now, but they love American brands. And also the Brazilian companies come to the Florida to get to the US because they have money, they have really innovative, creative products, and advertising is a good example. It's, you're gonna love this culture. And he presented yesterday to an MBA class. Everybody just fell in love with him as well as the Brazil culture. So this is the opportunity for you to learn about Brazil and the business through his passion and the knowledge and the experience. Okay, so thank you so much.
And it's amazing the amount of things that you can accomplish when you don't know how hard it will be to get there. And it's so knowledge sometimes is not a blessing, and ignorance is. And you're going to notice, or you have already noticed, that English is not my first language. So excuse me for the accent, and excuse me for any mistake that I can make here. And I hope you will help me with a few words, because I will need help to translate 3 essential concepts for anyone who wants to understand the Brazilian culture. And I think you will be able to help me. This is not important, but one of the things I'd like to point here, I'm a member of the Global Advisory Board of a not-for-profit organization based out of New York, but which does not operate in the US, but we operate in 13 emerging economies, helping what we call high-impact entrepreneurs really develop their businesses to get there. And that's something that has taught me a lot, and has taught me that entrepreneurs all over the world are basically the same, and that having a vision and having faith in yourself is the most important thing for an entrepreneur. Keeping the attitude no matter what. Very briefly about my companies. We have other companies, but the 2 most important ones are Cherto, which is a consulting firm which works on strategies and actions, because we implement the strategies, for the sustainable growth of organizations. And by sustainable, I'm not talking about just the environment. Sustainable is whatever you do to solve a problem now that will not compromise the future. And we have franchise store, a very innovative concept. Not so innovative because we copied it from a real estate agency. But it's a store, a physical store, 4,500 square feet store that just sells franchises. We sell franchises for 73 different brands now. This is a picture of franchise store. It is a corner in one of the major retail areas in São Paulo, and it's been a lot of fun doing that. And I remember we opened that in December 2008 when the economy was melting down. And I remember there was a news reporter there, TV reporter, asking me, and how can you know that this is going to work? And I said, and who told you I know it's going to work? Who the hell told you? I know. I just hope, and I'm going to do my best, but I have no idea. So we have, how do we help companies achieve sustainable growth? By helping them achieve effective territorial occupation of their target markets, to really be present there, doing the right things at the right time. We are a team of 59 full-time professionals, and we've worked for about 2,500 clients, a little bit more than that, since 1986. Our motto, and we take it very seriously, 1% better each day, every day. Whatever we do, we don't look for, quantum leaps. No, it's just 1% better every day, but every day, really every day. We were born as a franchise consulting firm, just doing what a franchise consulting firm does, but we learned to use our knowledge in franchising to improve other types of organizations. So several of our clients who have nothing to do with franchising, they use the tools, the techniques of franchise operations to improve the way they reach the market. And that includes some not-for-profit organizations. We have been working a lot with non-governmental organizations which have what we call social programs that work well, and we help them replicate those programs all over Brazil by using the mechanisms of a franchise operation. Something we have learned, and I think you are learning that now the hard way. You cannot expect the government to do what it should do. And by the government, I just don't mean the executive part of the government, but also Congress, also the legal system, whatever. You cannot expect them to do what is right. Sometimes you have to take things in your hands and just go and do it. So in Brazil, the non-governmental organizations are very strong and very important, especially in terms of helping us overcome the major problem that we have in Brazil, which is the lack of education for a good portion and a very large portion of our people. And so we have been working with lots of those organizations. I'm going to show you a brief video with the president and founder of one of these organizations, which is called CDI, and I think in English we are translating it to Committee for Digital Inclusion whatsoever. In Portuguese it was the Committee for the Democratization of IT, and that what we do, and I say we because now I'm a member of the board of that organization too. We teach poor kids in slums, in favelas, and we teach people who are in prison, and we teach Indians who are in Indian reservations, so very poor people. We teach them how to use IT as a means to solve the problems that they have around themselves, in their communities. So his English is a little bit worse than mine, but I think you will understand, and you're going to see a few images of real favelas or slums or shanty towns, whatever you call them. And they're not pretty, but the work we are doing there is great. So let's hope it works.
In search of solutions for the world we share. Principal Voices, in association with Shell.
12 years ago, I had a dream. And in my dream, I saw young poor people using computers, having discussions about their reality and find solutions to their problem. I was so excited with this dream, and I made a decision to change this dream in reality. Our goal is to work inside the favelas. Technology make a big seduction in the life of poor young people. And through this seduction, we can teach about how they can change their lives in their low-income community. Also, we work inside the prison. In this way, when they are out the prison, they can find jobs, they can find better opportunities in their lives. We are in a new age, the knowledge age. So people need to be included. They need to have access to technology and internet. Companies and governments need to work hard to fight the digital exclusion. We have now 965 schools, more than 500,000 poor young people learn information technology and citizens' rights with us. I love my work. Work as a CDI, it's a pleasure for me. It's the big motivation in my life.
Principal Voices, in association with
One thing which is very interesting, he said we have 965 schools that teach that. All of them are franchised schools. And we franchise them to other non-governmental organizations, to municipal governments, to communities in the favelas that organize themselves, and they are what we call social franchises. And what when he said at the beginning that he had a dream. He really had a dream. One night he was sleeping. He had an IT company. He developed software and software solutions. And he really had a dream. He lived by a favela in Rio, very close to it. He could see the favela from his window. And he had a dream. And I would say that most people who had a dream like that, he saw in his dream those kids in the favela learning how to use a computer. And I think that most people would just wake up and go back to their normal lives and forget about that dream, right? He decided, why not? And his idea was to build one school in that specific favela. Now, in Brazil, we have 965, and we also have those schools in South Africa, in Japan, in Nicaragua, in Guatemala, and other places. So if you have a dream and you believe in it, and you take your little ass off the chair and go there, do things, make things happen, things happen. Brazil is a blend of different cultures, races, nationalities, and religions, just like the US. I think we have learned, and probably that's because the way we were colonized, to be a little more tolerant. We are more permissive. There was a say in the times, Brazil was discovered in the 1500. And the church especially did not go there for some time. And there was a say in Portugal. We were discovered by the Portuguese. That's why we speak Portuguese there, not Spanish. And there was a say in Portugal at that time that there is no sin below the equator line. So you can do whatever you want. And they did. And they did. And so I think we became more permissive, which has a bad side to it. But it has a very good side to it too. Everything is like a coin. Every situation has two sides, at least two sides. So we are a blend of Indians, local Indians. We have Germans there too, and it's funny. This picture was taken in a city called Blumenau. See the Brazilian flag on the sleeve, the guy on the left. So he's Brazilian, but this is a friend of mine. She has a chain of hotels there, Chieko Aoki. She looks very Japanese, doesn't she? She's Brazilian. Gisele Bündchen, of course, the mixture of Italian and German that produces these beauties. And so this is another top model. Well, this was our former Minister of Culture, the Secretary of Culture, Gilberto Gil. He's also a singer and composer and someone very funny. We're going to use one of his phrases, which I like a lot here. So we are a mixture, and for many years, and David reminded me of that last night or the night before yesterday when we had dinner together, that Brazil for years was the country of the future. And people used to say, especially Americans, it's the country of the future, and it will always be, because the future never came, never happened. Everything was always in the future. But now it's booming for a lot of reasons, including luck. Napoleon used to say that the quality he looked for in his generals was luck. All the rest was necessary too, but you have to be lucky, and I think we got lucky. And the fact that we always lived in chaos in Brazil was very positive, because now that the entire world is chaos, we are at home. We just feel at home. So we were on the cover of The Economist. Brazil takes off. I hope they don't do that to the Christ, but...
When most people think of Brazil, they think of its passion and excellence in soccer. Not of skyscrapers in Sao Paulo, the financial hub of a fledgling economic superpower. They think of the pulsating beat of the samba and carnival, not commodities or the world's largest cattle industry. They see the beaches of Ipanema and Copacabana and breathtaking vistas.
This is quite a view.
Yes, incredible, huh?
not Brazilian tycoons like Ike Batista, who has the best view in Rio, not to mention a net worth of $27 billion.
Most powerful country in South America?
GDP-wise, we are bigger than all the other countries together. And, you know, in the last 16 years, Brazil has put its act together.
Ike Batista says the one thing that Brazil could use more of is skilled labor.
We have to create more engineers. In my oil company, I'm importing Americans to weld our platforms.
To weld the platforms?
Yes, there's a lack of welders. We're walking into a phase of almost full employment. This country has created almost 1.5 million jobs this year already. It's unbelievable.
So, how did we get there? It all started when this man became president. A scholar, a sociologist with lots of books published, a leftist, of course, and this guy was pretty left-wing, was the guy who made capitalism work in Brazil for real for the first time. So we are a country of contrasts, you see. We needed a socialist to make capitalism work in Brazil. And he did that especially because his wife was someone who was also a scholar, a PhD in anthropology, and she had lots of ideas, and she had been writing about those ideas, and he put them in practice. And I had the honor to work with this woman. We created one of the non-governmental agencies or organizations that is very strong in Brazil, and I created with her, and we were in the board of directors until she died a few years ago. And so this guy did a lot of good things. He got reelected once, which is what they can get reelected in Brazil, and then he was substituted in the, well, he used to say that the presidency is like a violin. You take it with your left, but you play it with the right. And that's and I think that's so smart, because to get there, you have to have, especially in a country like Brazil, you have to have all these speeches about equality and so, and people, and united, we are going to get there, and so on. But then when you get there, just get together with the business people, the banks, and so, and let's organize this chaos a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit, and let's make this country work. And then he was substituted by this guy, a former factory worker, a union leader, who is proud of never having read a book in his life. He has never read a book, and he's proud of that. And we all thought, gosh, Hugo Chavez. We're going to have a Hugo Chavez in Brazil. My brother, who's older than I am, much older, he's 80 now. He moved to Uruguay. He said, I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to pay taxes here. This guy's going to transform Brazil into a huge Cuba or whatever. He didn't. He kept. He was smart enough to understand that he should keep the social programs created by his predecessor. Although they are enemies, although they have nothing to do, he did not change everything just because they were in separate or different parties and so on. Very smart guy. One of the best communicators I've ever seen in my life. So, what they did together did this huge change in Brazil. Our middle class grew a lot. We have almost 200 million people there, so any 1% is a lot of people. So you see our lower class decreased and our middle class increased. And that has made a big difference. In the last 16 years, which Ike was referring to, about 45 million people who were not consumers because they didn't have enough money to consume anything became consumers. It's 3 times the size of Chile. It's bigger than Canada. So we created a new country in our country, and that has changed everything. But statistics are like bikinis. They show a lot, but they still hide things which are very important. And these are some things that the statistics don't show. We have discovered the world's largest reserve of natural oil right in front of Brazil in deep sea, below the or the salt layer. We call it the pre-salt oil. It's the largest reservation or reservoir of oil in the entire world, and we are going to explore it now. Ike is one of the people involved in that. For Americans, this doesn't make any sense, but for everyone else in the world, or most people in the world, having the World Cup in Brazil, the Soccer World Cup in Brazil, is big business, and it means big business. And so we are going to have it in 2014, and of course this one you know, we are going to have the Olympics. We were disputing, Rio was disputing the Olympics with Chicago, and Rio won. I don't know how. We still don't know how, but we're going to have it. And this also is going to mean big business. And this is a short video. Just they showed it when they were trying to get the Olympics to Rio, just to prove that Rio is naturally connected to sports. And I hope this helps taking you to Brazil, at least to visit Rio, if not to work in São Paulo.
Cidade maravilhosa,
cheia de encantos mil.
cidade maravilhosa, coração do meu Brasil.
Cidade maravilhosa, cheia de encantos mil. Cidade maravilhosa, coração do meu Brasil. City of samba and beautiful songs, deep in our soul it plays. Rio, we will love you all life long. Our happy hearts sing and say.
Cidade maravilhosa, coração do meu Brasil.
Verso do samba e das lindas canções que vivem na alma da gente. És o altar dos nossos corações que cantam alegremente. Cidade maravilhosa, cheia de cantos mil. Cidade maravilhosa, coração do meu Brasil.
We are a land of contrasts. I have already said that, but I think nothing shows it better than this picture taken in São Paulo. You see here an apartment building with apartments which are about 5,000 square feet each or 6,000 square feet each one with its own swimming pool, and a shanty town just next door. There is just a thin wall separating one from the other, and that represents the contrast that we have. So we are far from perfect. There is still a lot to be done. But that's the way we are. And if you want to do business there, you have to understand those contrasts and learn to live with them and adapt to them. We have a very challenging, or we are a very challenging and bureaucratic country. Very. No country can be as bureaucratic as Brazil. Italy is a bless when you compare it to Brazil. So is Mexico. In Brazil, you cannot even predict the past, let alone the future. This was said by a very important Brazilian economist, and I think he was entirely right. For instance, let's say, is 3% high inflation for you? Do you think that 3% rate of inflation, is it high? No. But if I change a little thing here and say that 3% a day, what do you think? Because we had that. We had that not too long ago. My company almost went bankrupt that year, 1989. But still, we didn't. And we are here. And we are stronger. So whatever does not kill us, make us stronger. And you learn. And you learn not to take the future for granted. You learn to adapt when you have that situation. I think that right now, that's very positive for us. Because we have always lived in chaos. Every coin has two sides. Brazilian banks are among the most solid and most efficient in the world. They had to become that. When you have an inflation rate of 3% a day, you have to be very efficient, or you're going to lose money. I think that Brazilian banks actually operate more like IT companies than banks, because they have to be very fast. They change very fast. They really are efficient. We were forced to learn to survive and thrive in chaos. And for us, any crisis, I almost got killed by Americans when I said that at a conference in Miami in 2009, early 2009, when I said, why are you worrying so much? This is just another crisis. It's going to go away. Just do your thing. Stop reading the papers. Stop paying attention to the press or to the government or whoever is saying, stop. Do what you can do. Don't allow things that you cannot control prevent you from doing the things that you can do. Stop worrying. Don't follow stock exchange market. Are you going to sell your stocks right now? No. So forget about them for 2 years. Don't look at the papers to see how they're doing, because you're going to get despaired. Don't do that. Any crisis is just another crisis. My mother used to say that in the end, everything is going to be all right. If it's not all right, it's because we are not at the end yet. So just do your thing. Don't worry about what China is doing, or don't try to find a scapegoat. Like, it is important not to allow more Mexicans to enter the U.S. Forget it. Do your thing. Don't pay attention to politicians. This morning, I was watching TV, and I was watching all those the Republican pre-candidates, and you are beginning to sound like Brazilian politicians. Forget them. Don't trust them. Don't believe them. Do your thing. Believe in yourself. Have faith in yourself, not institutions. 3 expressions you must learn if you really want to understand Brazil, and I'm going to need help here. The first one is what we call jogo de cintura. Jogo de cintura. How can I translate that? We have capoeira, this African-Brazilian fight, and it's very important for people who practice it to have the waist very nimble. You have to have very quick movements and adjust your waist very quickly, because that's how you avoid being hit. So you have to have jogo de cintura. This is what it is. Just change quickly and adapt again and readapt and adapt again and change all the time. Do your thing. Find a way to get away from the blow, because the blow is going to come. So be ready and do whatever you can to get away from it. Queimar o filme, to burn the film. Remember when cameras used films, and if you expose the film too long to light, if you did not regulate the opening of the camera right, what you would have? A bad image. The film would get burned and the image would be terrible. That's what it is. Don't do anything that will spoil my image, that will damage my image in front of the others, and don't do anything that's going to damage your image. That's why we have a hard time saying no. We never say no in Brazil. Never say no. A yes may mean no sometimes, because you just don't say, you say yes. We almost say, we don't have that expression, but we should, a possible maybe. Are you going to do that? No, well, it's not a yes, it's not a no, it's a possible maybe. You don't, because you don't know where the other person is going to be in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. And that person may be in a position to cause you problems. So you don't burn your film with that person. You don't do anything that will burn your film. So that's why for Americans who are used to yes is yes, no is no, black is black, white is white, we understand very clearly that between black and white there are at least 64 shades of gray, and we use them all. And the last, and I would say most important expression, jeitinho. How can I translate jeitinho? Literally, little way. Anything ending with inho or inha is the diminutive form of the word. So it is a way of saying harsh things without being harsh. You can say things which could be very offensive. If I say to an official, for instance, or the girl at the counter, the check-in counter of the airline, when she tells me, well, the flight is closed already. Sorry, sir, you are 2 minutes late. If I ask her, is there a jeito, is there a way, it's going to sound like I'm trying to bribe her to allow me to enter. But if I say, is there a jeitinho? A jeitinho is a jeitinho. She's going to find, and that happened to me, actually, 2 weeks ago. I was going to Rio, and I got to the airport. Traffic was terrible, as it always is in São Paulo. And I got to the airport. I got to the check-in counter 2 minutes late. Too late. And she said, sorry, sir, it's closed. Oh, find a jeitinho, please. I said, do you really have to be in Rio? You know, I have to. I have to. Find a jeitinho. Just a minute. Just got a radio or whatever, called the gate and said, hold that plane. A very important person is going there. I'm not an important person. She didn't know who I am. But she found a jeitinho. It's a way not to break the rules, but to bend them, to go around them. And why did I choose this picture? And I have to explain that. Carnival is a time when people really go wild. If we are unrepressed, as we are, all year long, at Carnival we really go wild. In Rio, they go wilder than anywhere else. And people drink a lot of beer and caipirinha and so on, and they used to pee on the streets, because when you have a lot of beer, you need to pee at some point. And people just peed on the streets. And the mayor, the new mayor in Rio, said, we are going to end this. And anyone caught peeing on the street is going to be arrested. And he was serious about it. So an entrepreneur found a way, a little way around the rule. He built this thing on top of a drain on the street. And it's called pee in the drain. And he charged 50 cents for that. And people would go to the police and say, listen, this guy, well, they're not peeing in public. So, But shouldn't he have a permit? Come on, it's Carnival. Where is he going to get a permit now? So that's the jeitinho. Was it legal? Probably not. Was it illegal? Well, there's no law saying that you cannot build something like that and put it on the street. So it's a way around the rule, and there is a lot of that. Remember, there's no sea below the equator line, so you can adapt. You can adapt. You can adapt if you use jeitinho. Don't try to give a jeito away. No, that's too harsh. How foreigners who know Brazil very well, and I've been collecting these phrases for years, and I picked some of them just to show to you, how they describe Brazilians. And I agree with most of what is said by them. Brazilians are creative and adaptative. They are used to living and thriving in uncertainty. They embrace uncertainty. They just keep on learning and adapting, even making up solutions as they go. They have an immense ability to learn, adapt, and improve everything or anything. Exuberant, oversexed, not repressed at all. Brazilians spend a lot of time in conversations unrelated to the business at hand to build the relationship. Building the relationship is the most important thing in Brazil. Loyal to their friends. Relationships are a lot more important than money, and they are. Relationships are the most important consideration, even over product or company with which one is associated. Very casual, easygoing, and at the same time, hard workers. Probably he was talking about São Paulo. Who manage to combine work and fun. There is no personal space. I think this is the biggest difference. Steve was asking me last night, what's the biggest difference? You come to the US very often. What's the biggest difference in terms of culture that you feel? Personal space. We don't have that concept. We don't respect the other person's space. So we are always too close to other people, and we touch. And as this was an American guy said, they touch and hug and pet each other all the time. Even strangers and business associates they have just met. So be ready. Who said about New York that if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, had obviously never been to São Paulo. Brazilians love the smart underdog, the anti-hero that outsmarts the big, powerful guy. If they ever had bullfights in Brazil, Brazilians would cheer for the bull. And that's true. So you're going to see a little of that in advertising. So it has a lot to do with how you market things in Brazil. For Brazilians, fun is not the opposite of serious. It's the opposite of boring. They laugh of themselves. They make jokes about their worst problems. They truly believe that God is Brazilian, and they may be right about it. We do believe. God is Brazilian, I'm sure. They are really happy, probably the happiest people on earth. And I think that no product symbolizes the Brazilian way of life better than Havaianas. That's why I brought this miniature for David. Because they have captured the spirit of Brazilians, not only in their products, but in the way they communicate those products and the way they advertise them. And in Brazil, everybody wears them everywhere in almost any occasion. And because that's the way we are. We are casual. We are informal. Let's see some of the ads.
Ai, meu Deus, agora deixa eu ver. Laranja, tá bom. Ups, foi. E aí?
Oi, você tá pronta?
Tô. Vamos?
Mas você vai assim, de sandália?
Eu tô de Havaianas, todo mundo sai assim.
Sei não, hein? Não é melhor você trocar?
Você me dá um minutinho?
Claro, eu te espero.
Não, então tá, já tô descendo. Tá, beijo. Prontinho, troquei.
Perhaps girls and ladies would not wear Havaianas when going to a fancy wedding reception. But if you have been to one there, as you leave the reception, probably they're going to be wearing one. Like even the bride will be wearing one. Because it's impossible to keep those high heels for a long time, isn't it, girls? You look very good in them, but they're terrible. So it has become a party favor in weddings, in other types of receptions, in proms, things like that. You just give them out, and everybody wears them with those. See the bride with all that white dress and beautiful dress wearing Havaianas as she leaves her own wedding reception. Some differences between marketing in Brazil and marketing in the US, and that's just my view, and maybe and probably I'm not the best person to talk about them. And by the way, you and I and everyone else, we are marketing all the time, not only when we are selling a product, but we are always marketing our ideas, our projects, ourselves. And when you are at the bar and you try to hit someone, you're marketing yourself. Or when you dress in a fancy dress and you try to look your best, you're marketing yourself in a job interview or whatever. So in any situation, Brazil or the US, marketing should always start with the customer. It should start there and end there, because that's it. The customer is the one who can make the decision on accepting whatever we're trying to market or not. So I think that this is the same, Brazil or US. But to reach the customer, you need to understand his or her culture, the way he or she thinks, and the way what really appeals to that customer. And that may be, usually, what appeals is going to be the same, US or Brazil, but how to get there may be a little different. And marketing is not about what you do or what you say. Marketing is about how you make the consumer feel. That's it. And one thing very important, if you study the structure of the brain, you're going to notice that the human brain evolved in 3 different stages, very separate stages. And that although the 3 parts of the brain are connected, they're separate. They have connections, but they're separate. And the part of the brain that connects, that relates, or where the part of the brain where we make our decisions is the same part where the feelings are, but not the same part where the speech is or language is. So that's why you have to get into an emotional connection with the consumer, not rational. Don't give the consumer spreadsheets or rational reasons to do this or that. We don't act upon rational data. We use the rational data either to cause some emotion or to justify something that we have already decided. But you have to really reach the emotion, and that's US, Brazil, Russia, or China, because that's the human being. It's not a matter of just listening to the consumer. You have to really analyze and understand the behavior of the consumer, because it shows you ways to get to that emotional place of the brain where decisions are going to be made, right? Our former Minister of Culture uses to say that people know what they want, but they also want things that they don't know. They don't know at the rational level, but they are there in the emotional level, the need for that. Who really needed an iPod when Steve Jobs launched the first one? No one. but we needed music, accessible music. So you really have to understand. Henry Ford used to say, if I asked people what they wanted when I invented the car, people would say they wanted a faster horse. Because they didn't know a car, but they needed one, and they wanted one. They want what they don't know at the rational level, but the need is there. So if you touch that need, then you create a market. Businesses that could never go wrong in Brazil until they went wrong because they did not capture our culture. And I'm going to talk about American businesses. And if there is a big mistake American businessmen have made when going to Brazil and other places, is being too arrogant, is thinking that globalization means doing things the American way in other countries. It doesn't. You have to understand the culture, and you have to adapt. In Brazil, Pizza Hut was a terrible failure in the beginning. Now it's successful because they have changed things that they need to change, like the flavor of pizza, like the names of certain types of pizza, like the ingredients they use in some of the pizza, like having a thin crust pizza that perhaps Americans don't care for, but we need them, especially in São Paulo. KFC, they tried to convince people in São Paulo to eat fried chicken from a plastic bucket with our hands. Paulistas don't touch food with their hands. We don't touch food. We don't eat pizza with our hands. We use a fork and a knife. If you are going to eat a sandwich in São Paulo, you wrap it with a napkin because you don't touch food. Why? I don't know why. That's the way it is. And don't try to convince me that's the wrong way. That's the way it's always been. So don't try to convince me to eat fried chicken from a plastic bucket. Serve it to me on a china dish, a nice one, plate, with a fork and a knife, which are not plastic, metal ones. And I'll pay more for that chicken. But don't give me it in a plastic bucket, expecting me to take it with my hands and eat. It's not for you, for us. That's the way it is. Now they are doing well. Oh, they also have taken coleslaw out of the menu. We don't get coleslaw. We don't get mashed potatoes and gravy. We just don't grab that. You eat fried chicken with French fries. And people would say, no, not with French fries. By the way, French fries that we pick with a fork, not the hand. Arby's. Arby's tried to mark its fantastic sandwich. I really enjoyed Arby's sandwiches. But they called it a roast beef sandwich. No. Roast beef is that thing I eat at my mother's home, and it's done with first quality meat, and it's toasted around and pink inside. It's not that agglomerate of things that you put in your sandwich. The sandwich is great, but it's not a roast beef sandwich. Don't call it that. Dunkin' Donuts. We don't have that. We don't dunk things in coffee and eat them. We just don't do that. And don't try to convince me that a Dunkin' Donuts is good for me. Dunkin' Donuts, they had a very short period in which they were successful in Brazil, when they used humor to market their products. And they assumed, first, I remember there was a billboard with a picture of what you would call an O-ring donut. And it would say, calibrate, I hope it's right, your tires. tires for us is what you would call, at least in the 70s, the love handles. So calibrate your tires. Eat it and get fat, because it is fattening. Gosh, it's flour, fried flour with sugar and jelly. It is fattening. Don't try to tell me it's healthy. I don't care. The other one was about the same thing, and they had coconut, like that, as if it was falling from the sky. And it read, it was, they had it during Christmas time, and it said, Santa is fat and he's happy. But those Americans at the marketing department of Dunkin' Donuts, when they found it out, you cannot admit that a donut is something that's going to make you fat. And then they decided that we should change all that. And then it became a failure. I did work for those people in Brazil, the master franchisee, for some time. And I still remember some lady from the marketing department in somewhere in Massachusetts, where they were located then, the Dunkin' Donuts headquarters, and she was screaming at us because we did not agree to decorate the stores in Brazil for the 4th of July. Because the 4th of July does not mean anything for us. It's just another day. Our Independence Day was yesterday, September the 7th. And we couldn't care less about it either. So don't decorate Brazilian stores with Brazilian flags on September 9th, 7th, because we don't care. We just don't care about it. And she could not grasp it. And I think the worst one is Pepsi's Josta. I don't think they even had that product here. But they decided to launch, well, they have a hard time with Coke in Brazil. And they decided at one point to launch a new soft drink at a lower price, trying to beat Coke on price. And they could not do that with Pepsi. So they decided they were going to do that in emerging economies only, I think. And they created, they hired a very expensive British or German company, I don't know, to pick a name and create a new brand. And very sophisticated computer software mixed words to make sure that the resulting word would not mean anything in any language, except that Josta sounds very close to one of the words we use for shit. You could not imagine how much people, well, they probably sold a lot because people had to have one of those bottles. We just had to have one of those bottles to show our friends. You won't believe what Pepsi's doing. But then they sold very well for the first month, and then they didn't sell at all because nobody would. Would you buy any soft drink named shit? One big and frequent mistake coming to Brazil, or is coming to Brazil, with a strategy for Latin America. Don't do that. First of all, because we don't feel part of Latin America. We don't speak the same language as the other countries. We were not colonized by the same people. Ask any Brazilian. And this thing of the hermanos Latino-Americanos does not exist in Brazil. We like them. We like them a lot, especially in some countries. We are crazy about them. But we are not the same thing. We don't have the same culture. And so don't treat us as Latin Americans, because we're not. We're Brazilians. Treat us as Brazilians. And actually, I would like to know, is there a Latin America? Do you have a Latin Europe? Do you have a strategy for Latin Europe? Do you really think that Argentinians and Bolivians and Venezuelans are the same? Gosh. But lots of US companies go to Brazil with a Latin American strategy. Does this look like this? Or like this? All these places are districts of São Paulo. We have, in São Paulo, we are the largest Japanese city outside of Japan. We have over 2 million Japanese descendants living in São Paulo. Hyunju has been there, and she's seen so many Koreans there that she was surprised. So in the city of São Paulo alone, we have totally different realities. Would you have the same strategy for Japan, for Italy, or for Germany? No. So why should you have the same strategy for São Paulo? For the entire city of São Paulo? Imagine the entire continent. Don't do that. Are you familiar with this annual event called Retail's Big Show? It is the annual convention of the National Retail Federation, which takes place in New York City every year in January. Of all months, they had to pick January in New York City. Unless you love slush, it's not the place to be. But they've been doing that for 100 years now, and we come very often, myself and my partners and people who work in our team. And in the last 2 years, at least, since the Great Meltdown, we have been hearing all these American retail leaders say that we must go back to doing business the way we did it in the good old times. I remember this year, Macy's CEO saying that now they are producing more than 30,000 versions of the same email piece, or email marketing piece, just to make sure that it will relate, or the people receiving it will relate to the message, because they are trying to establish a personal, emotional connection with the consumer. And it's very interesting that we have been hearing that from US retail leaders, because that's something we have been doing since I remember, since Brazil was born. Retail in Brazil has always been about creating a personal, emotional connection with the consumer. That's what we do. And how can you do? What can you do? Where can you act? And I'm glad you are using Porter here. Because basically, you have to act through 4 different things or components of the marketing mix. You create a personal emotional connection through promotion, through the product itself, through pricing, through the point of sale. Oh, there are people now talking about the 14 Ps, the 18 Cs, and I don't know what. This is basically it. You are actually acting upon or getting to the consumer through these 4 angles. And how do these work in Brazil? Product. For Brazilians, quality is not a differentiator anymore, because we just expect everything to have quality. It used to be that a few years ago we would have quality products and non-quality products, and then you would buy these because you didn't have money to buy those, and not anymore. We want quality. Design is still a differentiator, but not for so long, because all the companies are learning. The Korean companies learned how to design a car, or when they could not really design by themselves, what they did, they went to Germany and hired the best designers for cars there. So now the Korean cars are the most desirable cars in Brazil. Hyundais and Kias are all over the place because they look very good. But how long is it going to take? Well, GM is changing all their cars in Brazil, because now there was a time, and it was not too long ago, that you could sell any shit in Brazil. The cars that would not be accepted in the US anymore, then you would transfer all those equipments and produce them in Brazil, because Brazilians didn't care. They get what they want, whatever we want. They don't get what they want. They get what we decide to sell to them. Not anymore. A fact, more and more products of the same category look and feel very similar. So I don't think that you're going to get any differentiation by having a much better product, because I don't think it's possible to have a much better product. But just don't take bad products to Brazil anymore. There's a myth. Poor people want low quality products as long as they are cheap. It's not true. There is a guy in Brazil who says that the only people who like being poor are intellectuals. They really think it's fancy to be poor. Poor people want luxurious items. They aspire to having things that are nice, good. Perhaps they don't have the money to buy large sizes. So one thing that smart companies are doing is selling the same product with the same brand in different sizes so that people can afford them in smaller quantities. But Unilever has learned that Brazilians don't want to buy cheap soap or whatever. They want Dove. They want Omo, even if they don't have money. So sell them in smaller sizes so that they can afford. Sell them in packages without that fancy packaging, just plain packages or packaging or whatever, but sell them, sell the good products. We are very used to selling to the bases of the pyramid, because that's what we had for decades. We just had the basis of the pyramid to sell to. We didn't have the fancy consumers. The fancy consumers would go to Europe because of the extremes we have in Brazil. The fancy consumers would get on their private jets, fly to New York or to London or Milan or whatever, and buy the best products for whatever they cost, and didn't care less. But in Brazil, we basically had the base of the pyramid. So we are very good at selling to these people. Pricing. Have the right price in Brazil, and not necessarily the lowest price. The right price is a fair price. Sometimes charging too little for a product may be a disaster, because we may think that it doesn't have enough quality. So charge the right price. Think of the value, not only the price. In Brazil, payment conditions are as important, at least, as the price itself. Brazilians are used to paying in quotas. Inflation has gone. Inflation is gone, but we still have the mindset. So we like to postpone payment, because that's what happened. When you have a high inflation, whatever you can postpone means that you're going to pay less money at the end. And so it's in Brazil, you go to a store, you buy a pair of jeans, and you go to the cashier with your credit card, and she asks how many installments, with no interest. 2, depending on the amount you're buying, 2, 3, 4, 6 installments, without any interest. Of course, the interest is already there somehow. But if you try to pay, no, say, no, I want to pay cash. It's the same price. It's just the same price. So pay installments. Post-dated checks are still used a lot in Brazil. People pay gasoline, in 3 post-dated checks. So you use the gasoline in 1 week, and you have 3 months to pay for it. I think it's stupid. But you go buy medicine at a drugstore, and the girl at the counter will ask you, do you want me to split the payment in 3 or more installments? You're buying $20 of something there. But that's the way it is. So payment conditions are as important as price. A myth. Price is the most important factor. It's not. Not even for the lower classes. relationships are still more important than price, because relationships are more important than money. Promotion is probably where you find the biggest differences related to the language we use in commercials. And you've seen one commercial I showed to you, and I'm going to show you a few more here very briefly. But in Brazil, you should use humor, a lot of humor. And you can say harsh truths if you use humor. For instance...
Com Havaianas, o verão começou.
Amor, vou dar um mergulho, tá?
Tá bom.
Beijo.
Caramba, bacana suas Havaianas, cara.
Obrigado, mas não são minhas não, da Fernanda.
Nossa, que gostosa, hein? Imagina isso lá em casa.
Ô, rapá, minha mulher, você é jeito de falar?
Ah, desculpa.
Tá tudo bem.
Nossa, que formosura, hein? Imagina isso lá na minha humilde residência.
Havaianas, todo mundo usa.
Underdog, the smart underdog, not the hero, not the beautiful guy, not the handsome guy, the smart, skinny, ugly guy. You can and should use sex or sexy situations, but with humor, never in a vulgar form, like this.
Gente, Murilo Rosa.
Nossa, que isso? Olha uma barata!
Poxa, cadê a barata?
Ai, benza a Deus.
Havaianas, todo mundo usa.
Or, I like this one a lot.
Não acredito que você veio pro restaurante de chinelo.
Deixa de ser atrasada, né, vó? Isso não é chinelo. É Havaianas, ó. Havaianas Fit. Dá pra usar em qualquer lugar.
Que é bonitinha, é.
Boa tarde, tudo bem?
Olha lá, vó. É aquele menino da televisão. Você tinha que arrumar um rapaz assim pra você.
Ai, mas deve ser muito chato casar com um famoso, né?
Mas quem falou em casamento? Tô falando em sexo.
Vó!
É depois eu que sou atrasada.
This old lady reminds me of my mother. She was just like that. Once she told me when I was, what, 18 or what, said, do you really believe, does your generation really believe that you invented sex? You're the first ones to do it. Don't do any comparative advertising. Just don't go like, I don't think that even in the US they use it more. You should buy a Ford instead of GM because a Ford is better. We sympathize with the underdog. Don't try to be the strong guy, the good one, the hero. We sympathize with the anti-hero. Whenever you do comparison, we will stay with the weakest one. We like the losers. We believe that losers, if given the right opportunity, can become big winners. That's what happened to us. More and more, the bigger differentiation factor is the point of sale, the place where you sell, the store, or whatever it is. So, when right now we are in a mood where everything competes with everything, so the point of sale is where you make the decision as to what you should buy. And so a store for us has to be more than a point of sale. It has to be a point of relationship. There should be relationship there. But what's happening here? It has to be authentic. Not like Groucho Marx once said. He said once that it's very important to be authentic. If you can fake it, you're there. And no, you really have to be authentic. You really have to be authentic because we can notice. I hate flying U.S. airlines because even when the stewardesses smile, it's fake. They don't mean it. I don't think that those smiles they give you at Disney World are great. We Brazilians don't, because we don't believe they're fake. We like people who, when they smile, they really smile. They smile with their eyes, not their teeth. In Brazil, stores have always been points of relationship, thanks to our culture. Okay, so let's go very fast here. So to create an emotional relationship or emotional connection, you have to use everything, but especially you have to use the point of sales operation, the way it operates, the way it looks, but the way it operates, the people who are there. Again, it's not about what you say or what you do, but how you feel the consumer, make the consumer feel. So this is the Havaianas flagship store in São Paulo. This is what you see from the street. Then you have stairs that go down, and you have this. And you really establish a relationship there. You really established it. And some final words, nothing to do with marketing, but about crisis and opportunity. Have faith in yourselves. These 3 days I've spent here, I've been watching TV, and I really don't like what I see. It's as if the U.S. has lost its faith in itself, and you shouldn't. You're still the most powerful nation in this world, and you're going to be for a long time, as long as you believe in yourselves. And you have to trust yourselves, not necessarily the leaders, the kind of leaders that you have right now. And I don't mean one specific, I mean them all. They are worse than ours, and ours are very bad. So don't expect anything from them. Do your thing. And I'm going to leave you with this.
Eu quero menos. Menos roupa, menos cabeça quente, menos falta de tempo, menos resolver tudo por e-mail, menos distância. Ah, eu quero menos pra mim. E quer saber? Eu desejo o mesmo pra você. Havaianas, mais legítimas.
Thank you very much for your time.